Hey y'all, I am SB Roz, coach, who has her phone sound still on. Whoops. It's President's Day. I was about to say that I don't know how I'm supposed to celebrate President's Day, but then I remembered that I've spent a chunk of the day working on my taxes, and that just seems like a mighty appropriate way to spend President's Day inadvertently enough. But that's not what I wanted to make a little video about. What I had on my mind was what I'm thinking of as the first all up in it brief, which I'm hoping to do with other people and more of my own. But Teresa and I had this experience over the weekend that just feels really rich for sharing to me. We were out wandering around downtown in our little bitty mountain town, and and we went in for tacos at one of our favorite joints for lunch. And I just picked up this tiny little moment of conversation between the duo in front of us. And the woman was telling the man to go sit over in the dining room and that they would bring him his food. The kind of place where you order at the counter and then you go sit in a big dining area. And so I kind of looked at him for a second, and I, was pretty quick to surmise that probably he had been panhandling, and she had offered to buy him a meal. And so after we had ordered and sat down, I mentioned this to Teresa, and Teresa does a lot of independent stuff for homeless folks, just a lot of food and supply distribution, just because she's awesome. And so I mentioned what I'd seen to her, and she sort of got this antsy energy, this like, I want to be in on this. I want to do something too kind of thing. And he had food, like he's working it out. And I said, well, why don't you see if he'd like company? And so she went over and she asked if he would like company during lunch, and he was enthusiastic. And so we went and had lunch and we talked about whatever, but not whatever. So a few things. One is that sitting there with him, his name is Derrick, sitting there with Derrick, I realized how few conversations, like real conversations, not just brief interactions, but real conversations I've had with people experiencing homelessness. And I wonder how many you've had, And I noticed that every one of the very few conversations that I've had have started with a proactive explanation of the person's homelessness. I didn't ask. I wouldn't have asked. Teresa wouldn't have asked. And yet that was the first thing that Derrick started explaining to us, like what had led him to be living between the streets and shelters. And I got to wondering about that. And wondering if people experiencing homelessness assume that people who are more fortunate than them are judging them. And frankly, I think it's perfectly reasonable if folks are making that assumption, because a lot of us are. And I got to thinking about the stories of ourselves that we feel like we have to tell proactively in order to justify our existence. And that might sound like a big way to say it. That might sound like a leap, but I think it's accurate. I didn't want Derrick to feel like he had to justify that to me. I feel very connected to the idea that it is luck that has kept me in homes my whole life. The luck of my birth and my opportunities and my mental health. And that when my mental health has been challenged, I've had the resources to get support, which is more luck. I wonder if you have any stories that are about you justifying to yourself or to others your existence or your way of being or anything like that. If you don't, can you imagine for a moment what it might be like to need those stories or to feel like you need those stories? And if you do, I wonder what it would feel like to imagine not telling them and to practice instead assuming your validity as a human, because you are inherently. Anyway, so I'm all up in the midst of thinking about Derrick and what he taught me and hoping that he's well and safe and resourced. I hope that you are too.